We are gathered in a place that Erín Moure is going to describe for us in a minute, a very special place. But let me just say, Erín, thank you for joining us. Hello, Erín Moure.
Thanks, Al. It's great to be
exciting.
here.
Very little fist bump, very exciting. Chantal, Neveu, thank you so much for being with us. Very exciting. Thanks, this is great. And Sophia DuRose, hello.
Hi.
How are you? Laynie Browne,
Hi.
hello. We're here to talk about two poems, prose poems, by the aforementioned Erín Moure, and we have gathered in a special location, a location that's dear to you. Will you tell us where we are?
Well, we're in the Parc du Mont-Royal. We're on top of Mont-Royal, Mont-Royal in Montreal, Quebec, under the sunny skies. And we're at a part of the park near Lac aux Castors, Beaver Lake, full of picnic tables. This is the place where all the people not rich enough to have cottages come and have barbecues and get-togethers.
Perfect.
And so that's what we're doing. We're going to barbecue these poems I wrote.
No, we're not going to barbecue. So we're looking at two prose poems from toward the end of Erín Moure's Filreis, and there are several editions. This is the newer one, with an introduction by Sonnet L'Abbé, about whom we have a ModPo Plus video. So some sonnets writing. Actually, it's from a book called Sonnets Shakespeare.
Yes.
So these are sonnet being the first name of the poet, Shakespeare being the object of inquiry, and so these are sonnets. It's great. You really should. Wasn't that fun?
I love it.
That's a wonderful book.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a fab book.
So at the end of this book is a section called The Acts, and there are two sections we're going to be talking about. Sections 2 on page 82 and section 9 on page 89 for those following along. We're going to ask Erín to read aloud both of these prose poems, and then we'll just ask Sophia to pick one or the other, and we can start with it and see what we can do improvisationally. So, Erín, thank you.
Okay, well, the acts, first of all, in Filreis refers to the acts of thinking. They're all acts of thinking, each act. And they're thinking about poems. They're thinking about poems, other poems in the book. There's a little clue that I won't get into about how to find the poem in the book, but I will tell you, this one refers to a poem called Goodbye to Beef. And it's act number 2. Combining the colloquial expression with the words of intellect in one poem. To show how, when counterpointed, it is those colloquial expressions that are contextually the most pure, and at the same time so idiotic we must laugh. This is juxtaposed. I am tired of the same old interrelated logic of the signs that we insist upon as if it were true. Ain't true, truly, true blue. The slow singing of the evangelicals outside my door, their linguistic intrusion. There are days I want to give up my head. To whom am I being charitable? To whom will I offer it? It's the way people use language makes me furious. The ones who reject the colloquial and common culture. The ones who laud, on the other hand, the common and denigrate the intellect, as if we are not thinking. The ones who play between the two, as if culture is a strong wind blowing in the path of honor. It takes us nowhere and makes me furious, that's all. 9, the Acts 9, which refers to a poem called 3 Signs. And if the 3 parts of the poem are disconnected only because of the way we read, their connection being neither logical nor purely associative, but involving instead a giant leap in and out of the event that makes up the surface of the poem. I want those kind of transitions wherein there's a kind of leap that's parallel to the rest of the poem, where the parts are seemingly unrelated but can't exist without each other. There's no way you can logically or symptomatically break down and explain the connection between these parts. But yet, when you take the 2 parallel things and place them in the same reading, you enunciate a kind of alteration. Your perception of one part is affected by your perception of the others, whether you like it or not. And I believe anyhow that there are connections between seemingly parallel things that haven't been enunciated yet because of flaws or closed sets. flaws as a value judgment in our ways of speech. So then, do we give up? Or do we keep trying to break open the connections in another way? What I'm trying to do in my work these days is two things. One, break down the logical connections and structure of meaning, or referentiality, and two, break down the noun-verb opposition, wherein the present so-called power of the language resides. Both of these, while still using the surface of ordinary speaking as a reflex for emotional power.
Thank you, Erin. And in a minute, Sophia's going to tell us which poem we're going to start with, but I wanted to shout out to and acknowledge wonderful close readers who are part of the ModPo community who've traveled to Montreal, in one case, across the city, and that these are Lou, Appy, who came all the way from Prague, and Amy, who came from Ottawa. We love you guys. Thank you for joining us here in the park. All right, Sophia.
Well, it's hard to pick, but I think I'm going to select 9 to start.
So 9, the second of the two. Mm-hmm. And why?
I think because I was incredibly moved by these lines. Your perception of one part is affected by your perception of the others, whether you like it or not. Because I have a twin sister, and I feel like when you have a twin, you're socialized to learn your identity based on like this not language. Like, I am not. She's the short twin, which means I am not. Like, she's the twin who understood math, so I am not. And I feel like that socialization actually like made me fully understand that so much of our language is built around opposition, is built around these comparisons that, whether I like it or not, existed just because of who I was and how I was born. But it also is related to the line where the parts are seemingly unrelated but can't exist without each other, because my identity wouldn't be the same without my twin. I can't exist without her as I am now. So that really moved me.
So fabulous. What we're going to do is go down the line, not starting with me, but starting with Laynie, go down the line, and I'll ask each of you, including Erin, the one and only creator of these words, to offer a sentence or a point that they want to be put into the record as part of this close reading. So Laynie, you're first, please.
Sure. So I want to go close to the place that Sophia just picked out, but yet when you take two parallel things and place them in the same reading, you enunciate a kind of alteration, which made me think about Stein talking about any two words and juxtaposition, which seems really important in both of these pieces. When you put any two words next to each other, there is a relation that happens just because they are near each other, and that's a radical thing.
And that's a thing of it itself, that relationship that you can generate. Erin, do you have a little favorite line or point?
Well, I think it's to draw attention to the way we read this first line there, and if the three parts of the poem, because the poem called Three Signs has three parts, are disconnected only because of the way we read, and that they're making leaps that are parallel to each other. We're taught to read in a certain way, to read so that we can become good consumers, and sometimes so that if X is true, then Y can't be true, kind of thing. Instead of being able to read and absorb things that don't seem to fit and have them be both in the same frame of reference and both be possibly true or valid, like the truth, maybe the valid is a better word than the truth, at that moment. And they're both affected by each other, but they don't give up their personality or their who they are to each other. Their presence is both important. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Chantal, do you have a sentence or a point you want to bring up?
Yes, I really enjoyed the word surface. So the surface of the poem, more exactly. And at the end of the act number 9, this is the same. At the end of the paragraph, Erín writes, the surface of ordinary ordinary speaking as a reflex for emotional power. So I really enjoy the the polysemic surface, but I would like to know more maybe about you think about it, but doesn't matter because it's so rich. But I really enjoy this geometry in this resonance between pure you use also in the first poem. But yeah, surface. I enjoyed the surface.
I'm going to take a turn, and then that will lead us to a second question I want to ask. I believe that this poem, and the other one, but I want to focus on this one. This poem could stand. I don't want to pump it up so much that it becomes like a Macy Day parade balloon that has to stand in for all ideas about the poetry we admire. But I believe this could be a statement that applies to so much of the work of so many of the poets and people writing poetry and people reading poetry. And it implies a political criticism of the way language and power get associated, obviously, and it does what great poets do in, modern and contemporary great poets do, which is to associate the problem of power of language with the way noun and verb create an opposition, an agon, a problem, an objectification, I do this and you get done to situation. So I guess I'm saying that when you say casually, Erín, what I'm trying to do in my work these days, which is something people do politely in readings at the end. And I'm going to read some poems, and this is sort of emblematic of what I tried to do. But of course, in all the Erín that I've read, that's almost a casual way of saying, listen, people, we've got some situations here. One, we've got to do this. And two, this is a problem. So I want us to focus down the line on the second. Break down the noun-verb opposition where in the present so-called power of the language resides. It's been said, but it's said so coherently here. I think it's worth pausing because it is an ars poetica for more than a generation of poets and artists and thinkers and people who have political points of view. So Laynie, what do you think?
So you want me to say something about number 2?
Yes, it
Break
please.
down
Yes.
the noun-verb opposition where in the present so-called power of the language resides. Both of these while still using the surface of ordinary speaking as a reflex for emotional power. So complicated because it's also connecting. I feel like this whole 1 and 2 are almost, it's hard to separate them in order to talk about them. What
is this stuff about noun-verb opposition?
Could you read just 1 and 2 one more time and we can absorb it?
Okay, because, with the prelude, what I am trying to do in my work these days is 2 things. This was written probably 40 years ago.
These days.
I've been at it a while. These days, yeah. 1, break down the logical connections and structure of meaning, referentiality. This whole idea of what does the poem mean instead of what does the poem do. And 2, break down the noun-verb opposition wherein the present so-called power of the language resides. Because when I first started learning about parts of speech, it was like the noun and the verb, and the rest are not taken that seriously. But that preposition is this book talks a lot about the prepositional power.
Okay, so now I'm ready.
Yes, so what is this noun-verb opposition stuff? What's going on?
The question is, where is the power of language doesn't reside in the noun-verb opposition.
Clearly.
And so how do we do something different? And one way is to consider the ways that we use language, both ordinary speech and the different ways that language is used that we talked about in the first of these acts. The ones who reject colloquial and common culture, the ones who laud, on the other hand, common and denigrate the intellect, as if we are not thinking. In other words, getting beyond this oppositional way of thinking about how language works as a binary. You're either on this camp or you're in this camp, and there's nothing that isn't making a dividing line. So what if the power of language is in all the words and our choice in using them, not being constricted to this conventional grammar?
Sophia, take it from there.
Well, I'm also thinking about the surface. And there's like paralleling surfaces, the surface of the poem, the surface of ordinary speaking. And surface makes me consider that there's obviously something behind it or under it or reflected off of it. So the noun verb opposition is there's like meat under it. Like you have to get through that layer to actually consider like the juicier thing underneath, which I think poetry is constantly trying to penetrate and get closer to, even if it's not manageable with the structures and systems we have now in conventional grammar. It's like the trying, how does it look if it's refracted off of this opposition? What do we think about trying to go deeper? And that's the reflex. That's like the poetic reflex of the emotional power.
Chantal, you've been nodding in
Yes,
agreement. Yes, do you want to add a thought?
I just come kind of penetration under the surface with you. Well, I just also think about, yes, all the peripheric outside just noun and verb, as Erín just said, preposition, for example, or other particles, as you said, as a word, all the other words that they are not major, all the small words that we don't think about them, but they are very, very dynamic. So I think there's a lot of this community of language that Erín just proposed to us to have a wonderful embrace.
Erín, I'm thinking about something that Gertrude Stein said about the noun and something that John Cage said about just denotation generally. Gertrude Stein said, nouns, I mean, what good is a noun except maybe to call a roll, right? Meaning to identify some things, because otherwise we got to do much more than pointing out people and denoting them and making them mean, right? And Cage said, we should probably demilitarize the language by taking out all these obvious parts of speech and leaving us with a language that doesn't implicitly suggest that we should say a word and it denotes something, points something out, labels something, names something, and creates a linguistic other, right? And that is the problem of referentiality.
Also, it's kind of like fake certainty, too. It's like pretending that in this uncertain world we can have this certainty. And
it's bullshit.
It's fake. It's fake
Yes, it's
certainty.
fake.
It's and it shuts other people down, too. And I think this is why I talk about the surface of ordinary speaking, too, is also like, when do you catch the surface of ordinary speaking? When you're listening. You know, you're listening to people passing by, you're listening to people in passage, you're not part of the subject of their conversation, maybe you don't know all the things that are being denoted, but you can hear how when people speak that it is a kind of like the actual act of speech is like a reflex there's emotional power there, that you don't have to be like, you don't have to talk about your emotions. The very act of talking is emotional, so you and listening is emotional, so that those kinds of things are really more important than saying the noun verb kind of opposition. Plus, what people do in poetry sometimes is everybody's looking like, wow, you should have more concrete nouns or more concrete verbs and things like that. And I always say, well, there should be a balance, like there's some kind of a balance that this poem is meant to have, that you're working on. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. You have to let language teach you to find it.
That's right.
But it could be, you could have something really going on, and these abstract nouns maybe are necessary. I always used to say, like, if you can replace the abstract kind of noun with the word moose, and it's a better poem, then probably you don't need that abstract noun, that you could be doing something else. If
You
the
sure
poem is
do love
better if
Western
it's
Canada, don't
with
you?
moose in it. Except then I got a student who missed a class, and he sent me an email, and he said, "Oh, Erin, I'm sorry I missed class. I found true moose."
Oh, I love that. Really? Oh,
Wow.
you've used moose before. It sounds like
No,
in
I'm
your
just saying.
teaching.
No, I didn't pull moose out of the air. I used to say like these abstract words are. I call them moose words. Is this a moose word, or is this abstract word actually doing something here? You know.
Make me wish that I was your student
But
in
see,
writing.
like this word transitions here is doing something in this poem. I want those kind of transitions where there's a kind of leap that's parallel to the rest of the poem.
Right.
If I say I want those kind of moose where there's a kind of leap that's parallel to the rest of the poem, that it loses something. So we know this is not a moose word. That's a legitimate.
That's a good-
That's a
Oh, you've
legitimate
taught us
abstract
all.
word.
It's a good moose test, and I'm really glad we got a moose into this.
We've got
conversation.
several mooses. If I had $5 for every, even Canadian dollars, for every moose that's been said
No, you
here,
can't
I'd be,
get a moose. But
I'd
if
be
you have
able
a
to take us out
25
to
cent
dinner.
piece, a Canadian 25-cent piece
How's
has
a moose?
caribou. No, it's caribou.
Oh.
Caribou.
Wow.
Caribou.
I want to ask about Disconnected, which is in quotes, and then we'll turn to the other poem, the earlier
okay.
one.
Where is
Disconnected in the first line. So I just want to throw something out and invite anybody to comment on it. I think Erin is pointing out a bias against disconnection. I can hear so many times where I have just been talking in my usual digressive way, or writing, the way I write literary criticism is extremely dense and digressive. And people say, well, like a reader's report of the manuscript, the parts are so disconnected. And I think that is a bias, obviously a bias, against what happens when things get connected through parallel, through transitions, through juxtapositions. This is obviously a point you're making.
Yeah.
So I'd love for us, maybe starting with Erin, to talk about that bias. I mean, this piece is really about undoing the incrustations of thinking about language and meaning. That's what you're talking about here. So let's take the quotation marks off of disconnected and give it its due. Comments?
Oh, to me, when I read the disconnected in the quotation marks, it's a way of saying that the three parts of the poem obviously are not disconnected.
Or connected.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me they're disconnected.
duh.
I put them there. They're connected.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's like in the quotes, it's like the accusation from outside. It's somebody else's word. I'm actually quoting somebody in
Yeah.
a sense, Same as
It's
when
rude.
I have the quotes around
Can we
meaning.
be angry about it? It's rude.
Furious. Furious.
Yeah.
Furious, yeah.
Exactly.
Curious.
But
Sophia, I'm sorry,
furious
go
is
ahead.
not just mad too. It's just like energetic. Like it just gives you the energy to go and do
Like
something
Erín Moure.
else. Haha, yes, that's another way to say it.
It's the positive, I think of the positive idea of furious.
Yeah.
Furious, like furiously busy.
Yes.
That's not a
furiously doing
bad
something.
thing.
No. not at
Sophia,
all.
disconnected. I mean, you write disconnected. You've probably had teachers with a red ink saying, well, how do these relate? What's going on?
I do think that for a poem to exist in three parts on a page and for it to be called disconnected, I just have to say how. Like, they exist together. So by virtue, they are connected by choice of the author. But also, I think when the critique is this feels disconnected, it's because the reader doesn't want to work. Like, I think disconnection or like disjunction or whatever intentional thing the poem is doing that doesn't make it easy for us to naturally put it together in a neat little bow means the author wants you to work to figure out the parallels, to figure out how they exist together and why. And why should it be easy for us to figure that out? Like, isn't the pleasure of the reading in the excavating?
To quote the first poem we're discussing, it's the way people use language makes me furious. So let's turn to that, and I'll invite each of us to just pick out a passage, a line, a phrase from that one and talk about it. Starting with Laynie.
Sure. Well, it's hard not for me to leap to it's the way people use language makes me furious. But it already says it so well that I'm like, what do I want to say about it? I guess I'm reading in this stanza paragraph just a statement against, again, these hierarchical notions of one kind of language use is better than another, and we have to choose.
Sophia?
I mean, I have to, it takes us nowhere and makes me furious. That's all. It's just, it's just great. Like, I don't think I can add to it because I think it's pretty apparent that, yeah, I'd just be like, yeah, me too.
We agree.
Yeah.
Chantal, a thought on this?
I think it's a statement. It's a manifesto, as you said earlier. About also, I still think about connected, disconnected as a critic. Or for me, it's a manifesto also of agency. The dynamic between two words. So Erín just make a statement about that.
Adjacency.
Yeah, adjacency. Yeah. So
Agency.
yeah.
Erín?
I don't know. I'm trying to put myself back into this kid that I was at this age when I wrote this.
Shall we say just young poet?
A young poet, yeah. Is that people rejecting? I think maybe it was about arguments in poetry in the time I was writing that common culture or the colloquial didn't belong in the poem.
Right.
Yeah, some Americans did that, but don't do it now.
Right.
And
in
that,
Canada in particular, right?
well, of course not. And the also then the some who say like it's only like the intellect, like your poetry's too full of thinking, Erín, or you can't. I don't think in my poetry, and I'd say that's a form of thinking.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of like so that's it. That we're thinking when we use language, no matter what level of language we're doing, we're always thinking. We're humans. We're thinking. And then these ones who play between the two, the colloquial and the intellect, as if culture is a strong wind blowing in the path of honor, the ones who pretend to be all-encompassing to draw attention to themselves.
Yes, that's right.
And that for sure takes us nowhere and makes me furious. But it's because both things are needed, and the way people, when you listen, you have to listen to the way people speak and what they just have said, and you have to. We're always thinking, and that the signs can relate in another way. It isn't always the same old interrelated logic of the signs we insist upon as if it were true. It ain't true. It's that there's other logics. There's other ways to see things. It's like with the words in the poem in the cemetery. I had the three words murmur, murmur. For the sound, that gentle sound of running water when you go into the woods, there's the gentle sound of running water. And then I asked for the Mohawk word, and they gave me this word, and after they consulted the elders, and I said, well, what does it mean exactly? And they said, oh, big, rushing, noisy water. And I'm like, and then I realized, well, if you already live in the country or the woods, and the water is noisy. If you live in the city with the traffic, the water is quiet. And so it all depends. Like when we think that there's a logic of the signs, all of a sudden there's a completely different logic of the signs that's actually at work.
I think it's important for us to either remember, or if you don't have this as part of your own history in poetry, to learn that in the mid to late 80s, for Erín Moure to write a book of poems and to have in the back of it some prose statements that say, intellect belongs in the world of poetry. Poetry is not simply, I'm in the field and there's a Canadian maple leaf that floats down and I feel as if the fall has come and the end of love. In
And
other
then the
words,
poem is called The End of Love.
The End of Love.
So it's like telling you what to think before you start.
Crappy lyricism that tries not to be intellectual, to use the intellect. This was heretical to say, and also to have an Ars Poetica in the back to say, colloquial expression and ideas, they need to be all together, right?
Yes.
Am I exaggerating that moment?
Well, it was a moment that was important to me and that I felt I had to insist upon for myself, you know. Like in the poem Goodbye to Beef, which this thing refers to, it's like there's a Greyhound bus in it and
There's a Greyhound bus,
there's actually
right?
moose in it. There's moose.
There's
meat
a
in
moose in it?
There's moose
Can
meat
you
in
find
it.
the moose while Erin is talking? We'll see.
Well,
if
there's
we can-
not. It's when we got together what we talked of. The moose my uncle shot and cut up into frozen pieces and sent it down in 1964 on the Greyhound.
And that is far from, I found a maple leaf in the field, right?
And then this is the end of the poem. What I forgot to say was when we saw that box of moose hefted out of the bus bay in the din of yelling navvies, we knew it was goodbye to beef till springtime. And I haven't talked to my aunt since. I go deaf thinking of it or anything.
Oh, that's
God,
powerful
so
and lovely.
great.
Let's go down the line. Final thoughts about something here that you wanted to say that you didn't have a chance to yet. And Chantal, did I spring that on you too quickly? Do you have a final thought ready?
Well, I'm just focused on this energy of furious and dramatical, and I just enjoy it because in French also it's very close to the word furie. So I don't know in English, but so it's kind of it's another proposal, right? It's an interpellation to be furious as a powerful puissance d'existence. I don't know how to say that, but so that's for me a highlight. Of
Lovely, thank you. Sophia.
I was thinking about this combination of the everyday expression, but also the intellect. And I was thinking of Joan Retallack's A Poethical Wager when she brings up dislogic, and how that there's this dislogic of using language to create something new for the purpose of something new that doesn't exist, and I don't know if we can get there, but that's the intention behind it. And I think the melding of this everyday expression and intellect speaks to that political import of why poetry is powerful and also the responsibility of those who wield it.
Wonderful, thank you. Erin, final thought on your own stuff?
I'm just enjoying your conversation. I think
Just bringing back memories, talking about this old poem?
oh, well, sort of. I guess so. Yeah, but it's kind of just to be able to juxtapose something is sometimes to be able to open up a place where meaning has always been emerging, but it allows us to realize that it's emerging from this place that's working by putting things together instead of trying to make logical connections all the time. And in different fields, we're not so concerned about being logical because you have a brick house and there's a hole and you stick a metal frame with some rubber-based caulk to hold it together. So there's 3 different types of materials meeting to make a window in a house operative, and glass too, another material, so that different unrelated in a sense materials are put together in our lives every day, and so we should be able to do it in poems too.
Wow, I love that.
Okay, I love that.
That's fantastic.
Or, in one word, poetry. Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like that. You just go up to people and say, poetry.
Poetry. It's not, anyway.
I like to scare people. You know what
well,
I
I
do?
think
You know
I
what I
think
do
this-
when I want to scare
It's
people?
furious.
What do? You
I
say
say-
moose.
Poetry.
No, that
Here,
doesn't
look
sound
out, there's
scary.
a moose.
No. Beckett.
As in Samuel Beckett? That'll scare people.
Yeah, that scares people every time.
We all have to have a Sam Beckett face, too, but it's very hard to make. That's good. Oh, you're good. There's a Sam Beckett
that's
impersonation
so
here in
good.
this video. I've been waiting for that. Laynie, final thought?
Yeah, I love the sound play. We didn't talk about that much, as if it were true, ain't true, truly, true blue. I love the humor in the lines that follow. There are days I want to give up my head. To whom am I being charitable? To whom will I offer it? In a way, one way to read it is, we don't know how to stop our brains, but the poem kind of is that giving.
It is that offering.
It is that offering.
Yeah.
For my own final thought, I want to just offer a personal reflection on the way we, maybe my generation of North Americans, were taught language. So I was taught during the Cold War. In fact, indeed, there was a bit of a flaw in the early 60s, but, big time Cold War instruction in near New York, which would be a target of nuclear destruction by the bad Ruskies, by the Soviets. And so everybody was very nervous. And it wasn't simply science that we were being taught as a response to there being two powers, the binarism of power. It was also language. And I was told by the most well-intentioned teachers that every sentence I wrote had to have a noun that did something with a verb. You had to have a thing, no mention of the subject. The subject would be I or we, whatever, that was there. But there had to be a thing, and you had to do something or have the thing do something. There was action, it was aggressive, and there was often an object that nobody cared about. It was just thrown in. The noun had to do an act, it had to be aggressive. If I used a quiet verb, a passive verb, a verb in an unusual form, no. Make the verb more active. We're probably all remembering being told to make the verb. Okay, that, it seems to me, was built into the social DNA of an American growing up within a few miles proximity of the greatest city in the world, forgive me, that could be destroyed anytime. And we had to have the language that, to use your word, was a language of opposition. And it seems to me that in the previous paragraph there are connections between seemingly parallel things that haven't been enunciated yet because of the supposed flaws of our way of speech. To me, it is very personal and very moving to think of all the things that my teachers did not allow me to say, things that were true about my world, that my language wouldn't even let me enunciate because of the so-called flaws of my not using an active verb or my not even using an object in a sentence, so a verb had no object. We were punished, we were socialized to do exactly the thing that created the kind of poetry that we then found boring, and that poets like Erín Moure came around to point out that power is made from that kind of focus on opposition. I'm overstating it, but I don't think by much. Erín, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's very fundamentally radical stuff. Chantal, thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you.
So good to see you
Thank you,
here.
everybody. Thank you.
Sophia,
Thank you,
DuRose,
Sophia.
Laynie, Browne. Thank you very much. And Erín, once again, I think we should put our hands together for Erín.
Oh,
Thank you. The book is furious, and believe it or not, though it's an old book, it is available.
Reprinted
Right?
recently.
It's been reprinted.
in the classic.
It's a
And
classic.
Nancy, well,
Wait,
it's an
you've created a
A-list
classic.
edition. It's
You've
an
created a
A-list.
classic.
It's fancy.
Yeah,
How does
I've
it
created
feel to
a
have created a classic?
Well, it feels great to have this drawing of Vita Simons on the cover.
Yeah.
I was like, is that what you think of my poetry?
Oh, no.
She's like, it's alive.
It's great. So it can be bought. It can be purchased. And there's another
I like that
edition.
one,
There
too.
are other editions of this book called Furious. Thank
That's
you
the
all.
first.
This was
Thank you.
fantastic. And I am mourning
You should bring that.
the end of summer.
You have to put it in wax
This
paper and
is a
iron it.
maple leaf.
Yeah.
And we are in Canada.
Sugar maple leaf.
Yes. Thank you all.
Panadeira.